Hello and welcome to another Paula Armstrong ceramics. So for this video I'm going to make a plant pot. I need a new plant pot. I am going to put a plant in our ensuite bathroom on the windowsill, and to do that I need to make the plant pot for it. The difference with this plant pot is I'm going to put two different plants in it. So I'm going to have spider plants on one side and a money plant on the other side. So I want to divide this pot into two spaces so that I can have the two plants in it. And it needs also to fit on my windowsill, so it's probably going to be, I'm looking at an oval kind of shape that I've divided in two. I don't want to just put a line down the middle either, so I'm going to decide how I'm going to divide the middle. It's probably going to have a curve to the shape. So I hope you enjoy. Okay. The first thing we're going to do for our plant pot is to roll out a slab that we're going to use for the base shape. Now I've put down a pillowcase so that I'm rolling on top of a porous surface so that the clay doesn't stick to it, and I also have a wooden rolling pin. And we're just going to roll the clay out. When we're rolling the clay, we're going to do a little bit at a time. So we're going to roll a little bit on one side like that. And then we're going to pick up the clay, turn it by 90 degrees, as well as flipping it over, and roll a little bit more. And then again, we're going to pick it up, turn it 90 degrees, and flip it over, and roll again. And we're going to keep doing this until the clay slab is about 5 millimeters thick. When you want to pick up, especially when you start getting to a bigger size slab, try not to pick up with your fingertips like that. Try and use the fabric if you're using fabric, or keep using the palms of your hands so that you're lifting with a large area. If you pick up with your fingertips, you can stretch the clay. If you're using fabric underneath, make sure that there's no creases in the fabric when you lay the clay back down, otherwise you'll end up with lines in the fabric, in the clay. When you're about at the thickness that you want, we're just gonna very carefully and quite lightly roll over the surface in several different directions. And what this does is help level out the thickness of the slab so that you're not left with any humps and hollows from the rolling process. Another thing you can do is use some guide rails at the side, but they need to be so that they will fit on your rolling pin. So that the widest piece of slab I could roll with this rolling pin is about like that, because this rolling pin needs to roll on the guide rails to get the thickness. And that is our base. This we're going to cut out. I have a board that I'm going to place this on, and I know this board will fit onto the windowsill for the size. I am allowing for shrinkage because I know my clay will shrink between 10 and 12%. And so I can now turn this into the oval shape that I want for my plant pot. If you wanted to, you could use something round at the ends that fits as a template, or you could create your own template from a piece of paper or card. And then we're going to take away the extra pieces. There we go. Again, lift the slab gently without using your fingertips and keep it on your palms. And then we're just going to transfer it to the board. Okay, we can clear away our pillowcase now, and I'm just going to bring in a whirler or turntable. My slab has stretched a little bit as I've moved it over to the board, so I'm just going to readjust and trim where it's stretched so that I've got my shape back. And now we're going to make some coils. I'm going to put my base to the side for the moment. I've got all my spare pieces that I've cut off. I'm just going to wedge these up quickly in order to get the air back out of the clay. This is nice wet clay, so this is wedging up quite nicely and quickly. And I am doing the ram's head wedge just to get the air out. And then I'm going to roll this very roughly into a coil. To roll a coil, you want to make sure that you're pressing kind of a medium pressure. If you press too hard, it goes very flat and you'll end up with it folding on itself. And if you don't press hard enough, it just doesn't work. So you need to press about a medium pressure, and you want to make sure that you're doing long rolls. So you're using the whole of your hand to do a roll so that you're rolling the full circumference of the coil, especially when it's a nice big coil. Otherwise you'll make them go flat. Although actually what I want for this is a flat coil. So I'm not overly worried if that happens, because I am going to build this pot with a flat coil technique. Okay, so this coil is about 2.5 centimeters. I'm just taking the ends off the coil because I could see there was it had wrapped around and there was a little bit of air in the middle, so I don't want air in the middle. So it started to flatten a bit this end, and I'm just going to encourage it to do that. Squish it down, tapping it with the heel of my hand, and that's probably made it about 1 centimeter. And this is what we need to do for several coils. So I'm going to repeat this process, although I have fresh clay this time, so I don't need to wedge it up. And I'm just going to trim a few pieces off there. that I can then turn into coils. So start it out by making it into a very rough coil shape. If it goes flat too soon, you can just stop and push down the surface so that it makes it a bit more round again. This one's not going to be as long as the other one. There we go. And then okay, we're now going to start working on the sides of our pot. So we're going to score around the top edge of the clay base where we're going to attach the sides to. This is lightly marking. I'm not going very deep. It's just giving a bit of extra surface area for the slip to work in. And then I have a pot of slip, and I am just going to apply the slip where I've put the score marks all around this edge. And slip is just watered down clay, so it's just some of the clay that I'm building with that I've mixed together with some water, and it helps the joins stick, makes sure that they're less likely to crack apart when we put them through the kiln. So I'm then going to take one of my flat coils and put the narrow edge along where I've just put the slip so that it's standing tall on the edge of the pot. I'm just going to cut the front off just there and add in a small section with a bit of slip on the two sides in between. Add the two together. Once we have our coil in place, we're going to blend together using your hand behind to support. And I use tools. You can use your fingers. I find the tools are easier in that you don't want to press in too hard. What we're doing is scraping the clay up, and so I find tools make it easier to remember not to put too much pressure in. We're just scraping over the surface. And then on the inside, we're going to join the coil and smooth over as well. Now we're going to go up a little higher with our sides. And to do that, if your clay is quite wet, you can put straight onto this and just blend the two pieces together. To be more secure in the join, we can do the same thing as we did around the edge and score the surface. You see, I'm not being quite so careful with how much I score the surface this way because my clay is quite wet and I'm not overly worried about how this is going to join. It's going to stick together. A little bit of slip. Try not to put too much slip on because you'll add moisture into your clay, and the wetter the clay is, the weaker it is, and you will find that the sides will start to slump. So once we've got the slip on, we do exactly what we did for the last coil. On top, I'm just going to cut this end so that I'm ready ahead of time for joining. And we go all the way around. Now, I don't think my plant pot has to be especially tall, so I think I'm only going to go one more coil high for this plant pot, especially as it's going to be on a windowsill. But I have a gap again at the back to fill, so I'm going to do the same thing. And we filled the gap. And this time, again, we're going to scrape over the join, supporting behind with your other hand. And then again on the inside. Because I scraped down on the outside, it's a good idea to scrape up on the inside. It makes it a little bit of a stronger joint to go in opposite directions when you're doing the join scrapes. Thanks for watching this video. If you're enjoying what you're watching, please hit the subscribe and like buttons, as that would help me out greatly. If you'd like to see notifications of my videos as soon as they come up, then please click the bell button. Okay. To make the pot taller, you just keep repeating this process until it's the height that you want it to be. Okay, once you have your sides built up to the height that you want, we can use a rubber kidney tool to smooth them a little bit and help shape if necessary. And you again support with your hand behind, and then you can just run the tool over the surface. This also helps make sure that all of the coils are blended together, so you shouldn't be able to see any of the lines where the coils were. And we're going to do the smoothing on both sides, so the inside as well. For this pot, I'm not going to be overly neat because I'm going to go in and add a pinching texture next. All I want is things to be well joined and reasonably tidy. There we go, nice and smooth. I'm just going to tidy this top edge as well, get rid of these extra bits from where I did the joining. Okay. Now, I want a bit of a texture in these walls, so I'm just going to go around and put some random pinch marks in. This will slightly alter the shape of your pot, but I quite like the texture. And then I'm just going to smooth this inside join at the base. Okay, the next job is to put the dividing line into the pot. I'm thinking I'm going to put a nice curve, almost a yin and yang maybe. Or do I do a diagonal? Actually, no, diagonal is going to be best for this shape. And I'm going to pull the wall in a little bit at each of the sides where I'm going to put the diagonal. Like that. So again, I'm going to score where I'm putting the coil down, and then some slip. I'm also going to put some slip up the side where the coil is going to touch as well. And then I'm going to pop this in. And again, I'm going to blend this coil to the base. So I'm scraping the clay from the coil surface down so that some of that clay then spreads across the base. And the join between the two can't be seen anymore. And I'm doing this on both sides of the coil. And smooth with my finger. I also need to make sure that the ends are joined to the sides of the pot. And now we score the top, add some slip, and go up another 2 coils, the same as we did on the outside. The difference this time is I'm going to add both coils before I join them together, before I blend them together, just to speed the process up a little bit. Okay, once these center section is all blended together and is nice and neat, or at least as neat as you want it to be, our next job, because this is a plant pot, is to cut holes into the bottom of each of the sides. I've cut 3 holes in each of the sides, and I've just done them freehand with a knife, probably about 1 centimeter diameter for each of the holes in there. You could use a tool if you wanted, if you had a tool that would cut circles out for you. Once you've got the holes out, the only thing left to do now is any tidying that you want. So I just run over with my fingers and tidy anywhere that needs a bit of extra work. Do be careful not to stretch things while you're tidying. And the other thing is, of course, this is a plant pot, so actually the inside is not going to be seen because it's going to be filled with soil. So it's the outside that's the main part aesthetically to worry about. But do make sure your shape is held the way you want it to, and that the edge of all your pieces are how you would want for your pot. And once everything is tidied, that's your piece all made. Next thing for you to do with it is to let it dry out completely, and then it needs to be fired in a kiln. The temperature that it will be fired to will depend on the clay that you've used, so you need to know what firing temperature your clay needs to be fired at so that you can tell the person with the kiln or set up your program on your kiln accordingly. Once you've fired for the bisque firing, then you will need to glaze it and fire again in order to make this functional as a plant pot, as we need it to not seep water through. So it does need to go through those firing processes and be glazed. But once you've done all that, you'll have a lovely, unique plant pot made just for you.